False alarm.
America woke up from its New Deal, socially democratic complacency, apathy, and amnesia due to another devastating economic crash. The oligarchic history repeated itself, but the New Deal history did not. Instead, America was duped by Obama promising to be another FDR. He turned out to be another DLC double agent, working to overthrow the Democratic Republic of America and return it to an oligarchy. He not only didn't prosecute anyone from the largest crime in history, he appointed many of the criminals to positions in the White House, a form of racketeering that made Al Capone look like a jaywalker.
What is that?
There is a large and popular business, which you are causing dismay. Why don't you just cross the street and let things take their course?
He even appointed Wall Street's defense lawyer, Eric Holder, as his chief prosecutor, the Attorney General. The guy who golfed with the criminals and aided in their impunity was now the guy chosen to prosecute them, which of course he did not. And now the banks are even larger than they were before. Under Obama, 90% of all new wealth went to the top 10% of the population, something Reagan's evil twin would have thought to be a step too far. 78% of all new jobs were part-time, no-benefit jobs during his term in office. All the while, he was claiming that what was going on in the economy was good news.
We were told our goals were misguided or too ambitious, that we would crush jobs and explode deficits. Instead, we've seen the fastest economic growth in over a decade, our deficits cut by 2/3, a stock market that has doubled, and healthcare inflation at its lowest rate in 50 years. This is good news, people.
He claimed that he would be on the side of unions, yet one of the only times he even put up a fight in office was the fight for the TPP, a deal that would, like NAFTA, that he criticized Clinton for, would kill domestic jobs and be a NAFTA on steroids. He deported more immigrants than Bush, and more than all presidents combined prior to Bush. He was nicknamed the Oil President. Even though he railed against fossil fuel dependency while campaigning, he boasted about the increase while in office. Bush was a Texas oil man, yet oil production decreased in production under his term in office. Oil production grew every year under Obama to reach 9.4 million barrels per day in 2015, a gain of 88% during Obama's presidency. This is in fact the largest domestic oil production increase during any presidency in U.S. history. He didn't just make lofty promises he didn't keep, he became the exact opposite of what he said he was in almost every aspect. Fortunately for him, his acting skills were even better than Reagan's, and he was able to keep his positive optics for most of the politically ignorant, despite his policy record.
Ronald Reagan, the actor? Then who's vice president? Jerry Lewis?
In 2015, Bernie Sanders attempted to bring back the New Deal into public discussion, but either through cowardice or an attempt to call the New Deal back into the now right-wing Democratic Party, he refused to call out Hillary Clinton for her oligarchy supporting policies that even Obama did in order to win.
All right? So now this is Senator Clinton. This is the same person who has taken more money from lobbyists than any other candidate, Democratic or Republican. Taking more money from drug company lobbyists and insurance company lobbyists, and she's saying, I'm out of touch? Who do you think is out of touch? This is the same person who took money from financial folks on Wall Street and then voted for a bankruptcy bill that makes it harder for folks right here in Pennsylvania to get a fair shake. This is the same person who spent a decade with her husband campaigning for NAFTA, and now goes around saying how she was opposed to NAFTA. This is the same person who says she's voting for the Colombia trade deal. Turns out that her top advisor, her top strategist, was working for the Colombian government to get the bill passed. Does that sound like she's in touch with you?
If you've got something to say, say it directly.
But you will not find that I ever changed a view or a vote because of any donation that I ever received.
Let's talk about issues. All right, let's talk about why in the 1990s Wall Street got deregulated. Let's ask why it is that we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and your medicine can be doubled tomorrow, and there's nothing that the government can do to stop it. You think it has anything to do with the huge amounts of campaign contributions and lobbying from the fossil fuel industry? Let's talk about climate change.
The 2016 primary was an atrocity on all sides. The leader of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was outed as working for Hillary and against Bernie, even though their own bylaws require them to be neutral. She even blatantly lied, saying she wasn't putting her finger on the scale. When it was proven by WikiLeaks, she left in disgrace, only to be hired as the head of Hillary's campaign. And the day she announced her resignation was the same day the Clinton campaign announced her placement as head of the campaign, demonstrating that Clinton rewards corruption. Later, it was revealed by Donna Brazile that the Clintons essentially bought and controlled the DNC, unbeknownst to anyone in the public.
My name is Carissa.
I'm Sarah Watts.
My name is Meg Pinto.
My name's Alex, and I decided to be a poll worker on June 7th, 2016.
I was a poll worker.
I was a poll inspector.
I was a poll inspector in San Gabriel, California.
Training on May 17th. The woman that I was sitting with, was telling, we came to that part and how to process no party preference voters. The woman that I was sitting next to, she started making notes, in the margins of her book saying, oh, this is new.
They're the only handbook I've seen so far that explicitly says, do not inform the voter. And so now they're going against the Secretary of State's own training, which is supposed to be uniform statewide. I mean, that's the fair way to run an election, isn't it?
I'm listening to the instructor, and he's saying that all non-party preference voters have to specify what ballot they want, or they're going to be given provisional ballots by default.
I have to say the magical phrase, hello, I should like a Democratic crossover ballot, please.
So you're telling us that provisional ballots will be the default ballot unless non-party preference voters specifically ask for a different ballot? Yes.
Experts spoke about California's record voter registration and the need for improvement, such as making sure no party preference voters, a voter bloc believed to heavily favor Sanders, could easily vote for president.
For no party preference voters, it was honestly quite a challenge. We tried everything we could think of with our limited budget to make sure the information was out there.
If you're aware of the mistake when you're making it, can you still call it a mistake?
The Secretary of State, of course, is close with Hillary Clinton. There are whole numbers of so-called bureaucrats in this state that don't seem to care about votes being discounted and thrown away. It's profoundly disturbing.
What do you make of the fact that the Secretary of State, which is the person who's responsible for handling elections, is a partisan position? Doesn't that seem like a conflict of interest in any state for the Secretary of State to endorse a candidate?
And I understand we're all people, we're going to have our leanings, but he was actively campaigning for her. And then you're also designing policies which have a direct effect on what voting groups come out. In terms of restricting MPP voters in this election, I think it's pretty blatant.
If I were to put a percentage on it, 40% of them were provisional, and a lot of them were vote by mail.
Out of 319, they give out 70 provisional ballots.
Less than 275 people that showed up to vote, and we gave out 57 provisional ballots.
I shared a precinct in Pasadena where I witnessed 157 provisional votes out of 300. That's more than half.
We had about 54 provisional voters. It was mostly young people that were on the list.
We had polling locations that had 80% of the ballots that were being cast at any one moment being provisional.
One time they turned the whole precinct vote by mail passively, and it was only by one letter, and lots of people never knew. They went to their polling place, it was closed, so they went to the other nearest polling place, and they all voted, but provisionally because they had all gotten mail ballots that they didn't even know they were due to get. But that was hundreds of voters.
Another problem that I confronted was that there was people that showed up, their parties had been changed.
People who had been registered as Democratic their whole entire life were now showing up as Republican.
And they were like, there's no way that I did that.
So this is the no party preference Democratic crossover ballot. As you can see, total vote count, it says 0. So it has 0 for presidential preference, 0 for Senate, 0 for all these things. Want to see how many ballots were actually in the box for this? Oh, all those ballots. So we have 39 no party preference Democratic ballots. These were stuck into the machine today, and none of these are counted on the report. Then you come over here, and the nonpartisan ballot, there's 1. But over here, it says 40. So I don't know if somehow the machine made a mistake and added them together, but here's the problem. Even if all these other numbers are correct, guess what's not on here? Any presidential candidate. And obviously, as you can see from what's showing, a dominant number of those are for Bernie Sanders.
I have always believed that elections were well run. I do not expect there to be a problem among Democrats. I believe that there was. I believe Democrats were suppressing the vote of Democrats. And I would have not believed that if I had not been closely involved in this election.
There was Sanders voter suppression, registration tampering, voter purges. The DNC worked with the media to not report on Sanders or to negatively report on him and positively on Hillary. Both exit and pre-election polls were studied and showed there were only major discrepancies with the actual vote count in the Clinton-Sanders votes in states that had no paper ballots and no way of proving if both polls were reliable or not. Further, and oddly, the major discrepancies were only found in the Democratic primaries, but not in the Republican primary votes. Even though there was an undeniable purge of over 100,000 votes in Bernie's old hometown, Bernie did not fight any kind of voting irregularities, suppression, purges, or tampering, proving that if you want to beat the establishment and all its corruption, Bernie's not one to put up a fight. He speaks only in general terms of corruption and money in politics, but will not call out people by name. So anyone running against him can claim that they are not the target of his indignation, and Bernie won't speak out against them. It's easy to see this as a losing strategy, and the opposite as a winning one, since both Obama and Trump exposed Hillary's corruption and won against her.